you are relaxed, but your body's saying something else. It's telling the truth. This gentleman thought he was relaxed. He thought he didn't carry any tension in his shoulders, but his body told the truth. And most of our clients are holding their body up by their muscles and not their bones. So muscles are like clothing that go around the bones. And the clothing gets very tight. And you know what happens once your clothing gets tight? You know it's uncomfortable, and your blood can't pump properly, and your lymph can't flow properly. That's what it's like to be compressed in a body that's held up by muscle alone. So GEM really helps people to give them a technique in relaxing that muscle. Unfortunately, that one on the left is not so visible, but you can see the right shoulder held up really high. The process of allowing the shoulder to drop to the one on the right here took about 5 minutes of non-intentional touch. And then the other shoulder got it, and then she went, oh my God, that feels so amazing. And the whole process was very quick. Her body was educated. She knew where her boundary was. She'd expanded rather than being contracted. And she felt the benefit of it. So to me, that's a simple thing that we can teach our clients and teach ourselves and catch ourselves as we're working with clients, because our tension builds up too, and our stress builds up, and our body can narrow. So we've got to check in with ourselves quite a bit. So GEM is simple but complex. As I said, or the Lina Rubenfeld's work, she called it 40 years of simple. You have to know a lot to not know anything, which is a bit of a Zen paradox thing, but it's true. So you get yourself out of the way doing GEM. In other words, when you're doing your technique, you're there. You're very present, you're doing the technique, you're fixing something. When you're doing GEM, you're present, but you are like an empty vessel who is present, being there as a witness for the client. You can't do this method without working on yourself. So the spin-off is really huge. So presence, embodiment, self-care, incredibly important, and healthy boundaries. And all of those things, if I was to ask people a definition of them from their head, you'd all have probably quite different definitions. But in fact, if we embody presence, if we embody embodiment, if we practice self-care so that it really works for us, if we have, in other words, the experience of it. So what I do with clients and what I do in training therapists is I've designed about 100 little exercises which give people a taste of what embodiment really feels like. Joining the head and the body. We call it mind-body medicine, but very often the body is not in there. So these little exercises give just this little taster, and then people go, yeah, now I know what I'm looking for, and I can go back and I can find that again. Because it's not someone talking at you with a word like embodiment, it's actually experiencing it. One that we touched on actually at dinner last night with a group of us as therapists was the importance of becoming a witness. I think when people particularly are very ill, that they need a witness for the change. They need someone who's going to be there. They need the touch between themselves and the client. So again, as massage or hands-on therapists, you've got a wonderful opportunity. And when you are congruent in that change, that's then when a real therapeutic shift happens, a real therapeutic change. And sometimes it happens for us as well as for the person. So I find in doing GEM, working on myself all the time is brilliant, because I'm filling up my bank account and I'm still helping to put flesh on my bones. So in a nutshell, assists the client with letting go, helps the client with self-education and with awareness. Awareness is something we cannot teach to anybody. Awareness is only the aha that they can get from themselves as a result of an experience. So we can be catalysts for that. And when we are catalysts for that, what happens is that the muscle cells remember. They remember the blueprint. They take up the rightful space, that's the stress space, and that's the expansion space. Someone's actually done some work in neurophysiology in New York on this, and they said that it takes 12 to 13 seconds for a muscular therapeutic change to happen so that it is sustainable. So, you know, in yoga, in the yoga nidra, where you contract the muscles slowly, hold them and let them go, I encourage people to use that 12 or 13 second count. I also encourage people to do it the old way and do it the new way, doing that 12 to 13 second count. There's something in the wiring that takes that up, and the body remembers it, so it's actually sustainable. What happens is people then can reclaim their boundaries. So we go into a place of expansion rather than a place of contraction. In other words, we can live our lives as a martial art. Imagine coming home from work every day, feeling great, having your energy account topped up, your energy bank accounts brimming, because you've been practicing this all day with your clients. It feels fantastic, and even with all the stuff I've been through in my personal health, once I really got this, I found it made a huge difference. My energy levels are higher than I've ever been. I'm 11 feet shorter inside than I used to be. I've lost my ilium, I've lost 5 feet of small bowel, I've lost all but 6 inches of large colon, and I have more energy than I've ever had before in my life. So it works. One of the ways of taking GEM also is taking it to the floor and doing a floor exercise, and I often get people to do this in pairs. So it's starting off with arms down by sides and very slowly lifting the client's arm and letting it drop. And it might take 10 minutes to get the arms up into this kind of crucifix position. What happens when you do that is opens up the whole of the area between the shoulder blades, has a huge effect on the heart chakra, and it's one of the really important exercises I use for women with breast cancer, is being able to walk them through that exercise and actually doing the lifting for them. They find once they go home and they try it that they just go and they do it and they feel like they're glued to the floor. Now, there's a lady, if you want to do any research on some lovely floor work, there's a lady by the name of Charlotte Selver. And Charlotte Selver was a body worker in America. She was living well into her 90s. She was still on the road when she passed away. And she was of the old gymnastic German school. And Ilana Rubenfeld actually trained with Charlotte Selver. And she had a really interesting story, which I'll relate to. Some of you have heard this story, but it's worth relating because it's a real teaching story and it's a real aha. So Ilana Rubenfeld with a whole group of her cronies are going off and they're having this amazing session, so they think, with Charlotte Selver. She's actually Viennese, and she's asked them, come in, lie on the floor. They come in, lie on the floor, an hour goes by, nothing happens. The session is finished, you may leave. Okay, that was supposed to be profound, they thought. They came back the next week, the next week, and the next week, and the same thing happened. On week 6, somebody said, Miss Selver, we come here every week, we respect you, you're a wonderful body worker, we want to learn from you, but we just come in and we lie on the floor and nothing happens. And she said, well, if you lie on the floor for long enough, something will change and it will not be the floor. Good teaching story, good teacher. So I get people on the floor. Because when you're on the floor, you're not going to have anything that's going to be allowing you to resist, or there's no padding much underneath people. I allow people to be a little bit comfortable. But when you get resistance, it's really hard to lie on the floor and do this when we're actually involved in that last exercise. So something will change if you lie on the floor, and the expansion process can actually happen. So for a lot of people in hospital beds, who lie there kind of crunched up, just teaching them to expand. I liken it to a butterfly that's come out of a cocoon, it's wet, it's sitting there with its wings together, and slowly it sits on a branch and it starts to dry out in the sun, and its wings start to expand out. That's the difference between holding on and letting go. And when we resist, we are resisting a mighty powerful force upon those muscles that we use to hold ourselves up instead of our bones, and that's gravity. So that's how we get the stuff locked in there in resistance. So it's not only breaking it down psychologically, it's very important that we work with the body and help the body to be re-educated to take up its natural space.